Hey everybody, my name is Mike Sherwood. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Don't Waste Your Life, where we remind you to be present, to be happy, and to be thankful. If you're new to our channel, I'd ask that you subscribe. And if you're a returning member, thank you for joining us again. And looking forward to this session. I'd like to really get what you guys think as far as feedback. I think that'd be really helpful. So for this week's episode, we're going to talk through top 4 productivity mistakes that I see on a weekly basis from people. So the first one is going to be around multitasking. I feel like a lot of people try to multitask and try to get the most out of their day. This just means trying to do. So today, guys, I'm going to talk through the top 4 mistakes I see as far as productivity and what you can do about it. So the first one will be around multitasking. A lot of people think that they can multitask and that they can get more done in a given time versus, doing an individual task. The second thing will be overpacking or over planning, just trying to get so much into your day on a daily basis, more than what you potentially should be able to try to achieve with the energy level you have. Thirdly is around avoiding difficult tasks, basically just trying to pick off these small easy tasks and just leaving these difficult tasks, and they just never get done. And the fourth thing would be being too available, which really sounds counterintuitive because how can you really truly be too available? So we'll focus on those 4 items, and I will give you my recommendations on what you should do about them to make yourself more productive. So as I mentioned, a lot of people think that multitasking is a way to get more done with less time. But actually what happens, statistically speaking, is that each task that you're trying to multitask, it takes up to 40% more time than what it would take if you just did that task to completion. So what is single tasking? Single tasking is just taking a particular task and seeing it all the way through to the end or to a good stopping point. And so when I get to that stopping point, basically what I do is I try to write something down on my planner that tells me what that next action is to move it forward. So for example, if I delivered something to my boss and I said, hey, this is now done, what I would put in my next action for that would be follow up with my boss to make sure he got everything and see if he had any questions and get his feedback. That would be my next action for that to continue to move that forward. I think it's very important that you keep in mind what the next action is for that. Don't multitask. Don't try to do multiple things at the same time. Because actually what happens when you do this, there's also a task switching cost, or rediscovery cost, which is just basically you're bouncing back and forth, and your mind really can only single task. So when you're bouncing back and forth, what your mind's actually doing is doing this, and then moving on this, moving on this, moving on this, and you're going back and forth, and you have to remember what you're doing. So what I recommend is don't multitask. It also uses more energy at a faster rate and it reduces your concentration, increases distractibility. So I just recommend don't multitask. So as I mentioned, the second thing was over planning, and that's just trying to cram too much into a day. Really, I find that I can really achieve only 3 top things per day. I can achieve other tasks outside those top 3 things, but what I try to focus on is in order to move that day forward and to feel that I've accomplished everything I can, what are those 3 things I need to focus on? That's what I'll try to do. Now again, as I said, I can do more than 3. And so sometimes what I do is I assign a point value to each of those tasks. So for example, I may be able to get 10 tasks done during a day, but those are going to be smaller tasks. So each one of those may be 1 point, for example. Let's say I can do 10 points per day. Let's say I have 2 big tasks and each one's a 5. It's going to take multiple hours of deep concentrated work in order to get them done. Then I may only get 2 tasks done for that day. It's important to do this because also in addition to this is you need to have time for downtime. You need to have the ability to go replenish your energy, your mental reservoir, go for walks, take breaks, go for a lunch, exercise, whatever works for you. By actually doing this actually makes you more productive because you come back with new ideas that you would not have had if you just kind of worked all the way straight through. So another tip that I have here is to find the most important task to do for that day. And remember, I talked about finding those 3 top tasks, but those could not be important tasks. So just maybe tasks that you want to get done. Important task goes back to Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and the Eisenhower square, which I will have somewhere up here on the screen that explains, and you can see the level of importance and urgency and what you should do with tasks in those. So the third thing that I see is people avoiding very difficult tasks. What they'll do is they'll go and they'll just try to get a bunch of quick wins done. And really what that's just doing is that's almost like paddling and just kind of keeping your head above water. That's all it's doing. It's not doing anything of consequence to move things forward. So when it comes to these deep, complicated tasks, I actually follow a lot of the guidelines in Carl Newport's book, Deep Work, which is to try to understand when I'm going to have maximum energy that I can allocate to those tasks to move things forward. And everybody's going to be different. For example, I had a guy that I used to work with that liked to work between the hours of 6 and like 10 p.m. That's when he was just so productive. For me, it's the morning. First 3 hours of the day are my most productive. I have the most energy, and I can really tackle really difficult tasks with very high levels of concentration. Because actually what happens over time is that ability to concentrate will go down throughout the day, which goes back to that previous step we talked about. You got to find ways to replenish it. So it's very important that if you're going to try to accomplish anything of consequence, there's going to be difficult tasks. There's going to be difficult tasks that you're going to have to do on a daily basis to move forward. So number 4 is just being too available. This one, it sounds kind of weird because it's like, well, what do you mean by that? What I mean is that people will text you, people will WeChat you, Teams message you, or email you, and you just quickly respond. And I'm not saying being responsive and being available isn't a totally bad thing. It's just that you have to be careful with it, especially in a work setting. What I've seen with people that are too available, they will get work dumped onto them. And that may be somebody else's work, and that may not be work that you are interested in. That may be the work that they are interested in getting done, but that is not what is helpful for you to continue moving your career forward. So you really need to understand when somebody is giving you that work, is that really going to be helpful for your career? So one thing I'd recommend doing is just, I don't want to say logging out of Teams, logging out of messaging services and stuff like that. But what you need to do is you need to schedule that per day and let people know that you're going to be away. And I know it sounds crazy. Some people are like, look, Mike, I can't close my email client. I have to have it open. I have to have my messaging app open. I get it. But I'm telling you, if you do this for a short time, the amount of focus that you'll have is just incredible. And then people will stop messaging you to get stuff done, and they'll just do it themselves. Actually, Napoleon, what he actually did is when he got his mail, he would not read it for multiple days. And the reason why is because most times the things that were important or urgent end up solving themselves. So sometimes not being available, things will take care of themselves. I'm not suggesting that you just completely check out, but the idea is that if you're too available, people are going to use you as a crutch to move things forward. So let's keep an eye on that. So I have one bonus item, which is don't be afraid of saying no. And this one's really hard. Personally, this is one of the harder ones for me. But you got to think about it this way. For everything that you say yes to that's unimportant, or that somebody else is asking you to do, you're saying no to something that is important to you, and that is something important that you would like to do. So you need to keep this in mind. Obviously, if it's your boss or somebody of importance, you got to do what they're asking you to do. You may be able to delegate it, or you may be able to push it off a little bit, but you're going to have to do it eventually. But the idea is that by saying no, it's allowing you to say yes to something else that you want to achieve, that you want to do. And so those are the things that you need to keep in mind. I'm reminded of a story about Kobe Bryant, where towards the end of his life, I actually just heard this from Ryan Holiday today. The story was just very profound, but basically what happened was somebody was texting Kobe Bryant and say, hey, I want to do an interview with you. And as a superstar, you get interviewed all the time. That's what happens because you're unique. And he basically just said, look, my daughters are keeping me busy. I have other stuff to do, holler back at me, reach back at me at a future date. And just by being able to say no, allowed him to do the things that he wanted to focus on. And I mean, we don't really truly know how much time we have. So sometimes when you're saying no, it allows you to focus the energy on the things that you want to say yes to and move things forward. So this is something to keep in mind. That story was so profound. So I will actually link the video where Ryan Holiday talks about this, because it really moved me. And it's a good reminder that saying no to things is important. So with that, those are my tips that I see as far as failures of people when it comes to productivity and what I recommend to do about it. And so I have 2 questions for you guys that I want you to keep in mind. I'm also going to answer it, but I want you guys as my audience to keep in mind, and I want to hear what your thoughts are. So of these 2, which one of these were game-changing to you, or that really resonated with you, and why? So I feel like for me was the saying no and just not being overly available, because it's really hard. I'm a helper. I love to help people. So it really resonated with me, and it challenged in a different way that I was not really comfortable with in order to make myself more productive and to be able to achieve the things I wanted to do. I really had to keep all that stuff in mind. The second thing was, which one of these is the most difficult and why? I felt like actually the over planning was really tough, especially in the beginning. I felt like I had to try to accomplish so much, and I would just like kill myself by working so hard. And then I would look at the results, and a lot of the work was just really crappy work, really shoddy, and I just felt tired all the time. And so what I found out was when I actually planned out my day more and just cut a lot of the fluff and focused on what I really needed to achieve for that day, I got so much more done. I was so much more effective. So with that, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys think. So share your thoughts on those 2 questions I posed to you. You can leave them in the comments below or reach out to me. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Thanks again.